Welcome to Norse Code, the number one podcast for your Minnesota Vikings. I'm your host and producer. My name is James Fagashnik. Thank you guys so much for listening. And at the other end of the tin cannon string, we have our analyst and co-host. You know him from numerous blogs and podcasts around the internet, most notably from the Wide Left Substack. He is Mr. Useful Human, Arif Hassan. Arif, welcome back after a month. It's time to talk football, kind of.
Kind of. I suppose.
I mean, do we have to?
No.
Excellent. So we won't. And helping us in this task is someone who you may remember from the first 7-ish seasons of Norse Code. He is an original useful human. He is Dusty Tran. How are you doing, Dusty?
I am well. Like I was telling you before the show, I've been experimenting with microdosing psychedelics, and I discovered that if you just like stack your microdoses, like take 10 or 20 of them at a time, they really work a lot differently.
Isn't that just a dose?
I guess you could call it that, but this is like a medical thing, okay? This is like for mental health. It's not just like...
Look, when I take 30
taking acid, okay?
When I take 30
it very much
pills,
sounds like it is, Dusty.
I'm not just going to sit here and tell you that I'm taking lots of acid.
You wouldn't do that, of course not. Especially not into a recording.
No, that would be wrong, quite frankly. So nobody's doing that.
Where would you even get it?
That's
just hypothetically. I don't know where would you guys?
Yeah, just what website is it? Just so I don't go over there.
Yeah, exactly.
If you know where
is there like a website that you like?
If you know how to acquire this, please go onto Blue Sky and message Dusty. He'd be happy to find out.
Just so he can avoid that website. Yeah.
Yeah, just give me a list of websites I should probably stay away from.
Yeah, that makes sense. And with that, we're going to start this episode of Norse Code. Hope you guys are all doing well. This is the way it's always been, Dusty. This is the way it's always been. Let's get some shilling out of the way real quick. Want to thank everyone for listening. If you enjoy the show and would like to help us out financially, there's a couple of different ways you can do that. You can go over to patreon.com/NorseCode for $3.50 a month, or a little less for the year subscription. You get access to the Discord, you get access to the bonus episodes, all of that. New bonus episodes should be coming out here in about a week or so look forward to that. You can also go to paypal.me/NorseCode as well for a one-time donation. Or you can go to norsecode.threadless.com for any number of wonderful pieces of Norse Code merchandise featuring the three of us in animated form, although we don't have the anime pillow up there yet. But we do have a number of...
I wouldn't worry about that.
Yeah, we have a number of wonderful items, including shirts, baby onesies, the stickers that have Arif on them, the little magnets that have the ghost of Dusty on them. So all sorts of wonderful items are available to you over at our Threadless shop, norsecode.threadless.com. Let's get into the show. And before we get into the real reason anyone's here, we are going to talk just a little bit about the contract extension that was given to Kevin O'Connell. You may recall that in the weeks prior to getting this extension, it had been reported that O'Connell could potentially be traded, that teams were potentially looking at this. We laughed it off as nonsense because this was just the bare minimum of just reporting. And once again, turned out to be nothing. And Kevin O'Connell has agreed to a contract that we don't really have details on.
Yeah, so Matthew Collar, I think at Purple Insider, was one of the first to mention that it was a 5-year contract, which is pretty typical. Also pretty typical of the Wilfs to wait until after the season. I think every single one of Mike Zimmer's contract extensions were after the season, and they were also right before the final year of his contract, which is also true of, I believe, both Leslie Frazier and Brad Childress. I think they just don't like coaches coaching in a lame duck year. And so this was the most predictable thing in the world. And yeah, so it's a 5-year contract. So I have seen some rumors about what the dollar amount is. Not that it matters because there's no salary cap here. So there's not like a huge implication to kind of chase here. But we know that, for example, Ben Johnson signed with the Bears for like $13 million a year. So if we wanted a good estimation of how much Kevin O'Connell commands in a closed market, because it's not an open market, he's still under contract, I guess it's like 15 million, maybe. I don't know. There's one insider who definitively reported a number. I don't trust him, so that's what we have. But cool. At this point, it's just pocket watching. Stop looking at his dollars, man. That's not up to you.
Just be happy that he is the coach of the Minnesota Vikings. Just be happy he is continuing, and that we didn't have a situation like Dallas did, and where they're hyping themselves up, talking about their new head coach.
Yeah, no, there's a good coach. We're all happy. He's getting a lot of money. That's awesome. That's it. There's like no implications. Like when we talk about player contracts, like there's at least an excuse for us to be like, nah, he's making too much money, which is that it like impacts the rest of the roster because there's nothing here. If he signed for $1 a year, I'd be like, that's weird, but whatever, I guess. If he signed for $100 million a year, I'd be like, that's weird, whatever. It doesn't matter. But yeah, he's the coach for the next 5 years, but not really because all of these contracts are, even though the dollars are guaranteed, you could just fire a guy at any time. That's just kind of how it works. So yeah, we've got at least almost certainly 3 more years of Kevin O'Connell. So that's you've got that now.
Good. Well, before we get into our next segment and bring Dusty on, I just wanted to take a moment and thank the Minnesota Vikings subreddit, who had a nice little post here.
Unusual thing to thank.
This is for a reason. About a week or so ago, there was a post, and it had discussed all of the. It was somebody who had gone out and was complaining about how all of these podcasts are, whether they're Vikings oriented or about the league, they all seem to be sponsored by gambling websites. And he was looking for a podcast that was not. And a number of people in this thread had posted Norse Code is not sponsored by anybody other than like their Patreon and all this, and had this really nice write-up about how they're not beholden to any like gambling lords or anything, and how they do.
Did you write this post?
They don't know. It was all about how people are not paying us to talk about gambling. So with that said, it's time for our yearly Super Bowl prop bet episode. And which is why we brought on lifelong degenerate Dusty Tran. So I'm going to kind of sit back and watch the two of you try to out degenerate each other here with your.
I'm going to lose
with your prop bets. So gentlemen, after you.
We started doing this content before sports betting was even cool. Like you still had to,
or largely legal.
Yeah, exactly.
Were involved.
Yeah, exactly. We had to come up with a funny fake name for currency.
Your Majesties.
We were like, Your Majesties, yes.
Yeah.
Or Your Majesties. Your Majesties?
I like Your Majesties.
Your Majesties is how it worked.
Because, it's Your Majesty Johnson, right?
Yeah.
Or Jackson?
Yes.
Your Majesty Jackson.
Yes. It was named after Tito's son, yes.
Yes.
RIP.
And now you can't, like, ESPN bet is a thing. And so the texture of the whole thing has like changed, but I don't know. It's still fun. There's still like, I think, all right, it's been done to death. In fact, you actually had a pretty good final word on the topic of what a scourge online gambling is. I think.
Yeah, it's evil. So if you're going to do it,
there should be no effortless vice.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it.
There should be no mindless vice.
This is it says the microdosing guy.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. You got to be thoughtful about your vice. It has to be behind at least a website that you need a VPN to access.
Yeah,
you go. Yeah,
you can't go to the doctor to get your acid. You have to get it from some guy at the gym.
If it's
no, that's exactly what Dusty's saying.
Yeah. But if you can just do it from your phone, it's too easy. But if it's going to be this easy, we can at least have a little fun doing it, right? And
there's a joke about your mom here. I'm trying really hard not to talk about it.
What the
Well, you just made it without making it, so you did the coward's joke.
Oh, good.
All right, thanks.
Sorry.
Put that out of the way.
Yourself? You feel good?
A little bit, because now I have to edit a curse word out.
What just happened?
Go on.
Okay. I'm curious to see what you have put together. I have a couple. I have a particular like theory of bet that I want to share.
Theory of bet.
Yeah, it's the most fun I've ever had betting on football throughout a season, and it doesn't hurt that I made a little money doing it.
Okay. I am curious about this. So James put together a bunch. I put together like 4. And Dusty probably has not contributed to the Google sheet at all. So we have no idea what's going on there.
That is such a lie. It's right there. It's differently formatted and everything.
Differently formatted. Mine's differently. Oh, is this like the tiny text you can't read?
He just
tiny text you can't read.
He put a bunch of text in white. Just if you hit select all.
If you just burn a candle underneath it. Yeah, I got it.
I wrote it in lemon juice all over my screen with a stylus.
The story of Dusty's life. All right, so you have a philosophy.
Yeah, I want to hear about this philosophy. Or do we have to go into your bets before we learn your philosophy?
You know what? I was trying to do the podcasty thing and tease future content, but we can.
No, we're not good podcasters. Don't do that.
Clearly. Okay, so the whole thing.
You seem unprepared to share your philosophy.
Well, yeah, exactly. I didn't realize I was going to be at the top of the show. On the topic of picking bets that are fun to watch, right? Because casual bettors for the Super Bowl.
Sure.
There's the silly prop bets like the halftime show and the coin flip, but a lot of those are just kind of like single incidents. They happen and then they're over. Or they don't happen, and then they're over. I have found that betting the alternate lines for rushing and receiving yards for both like good players and kind of fringe players is a great way to stay engaged in the game and make some easy money betting on outcomes that are typically fairly likely. I learned about this. Well, I first saw this type of bet and had kind of thought about it, but he really started doing it well. His name is Cody Brown. He's a tout, and he puts together these fun spreadsheets of kind of his theory of mismatches with a player's production at their position versus their implied odds that week, and combining big mismatches into parlays that are likely to hit is kind of like his bread and butter. We call them the 50-50-50 because you typically take 3 players and pick them to reach 50 receiving yards or rushing yards throughout the course of the game. You can also do it with like tight ends and stuff at like 25, 25, 25. Sometimes, depending on how good the players are, you won't be able to get a line. Like, for example, in the Super Bowl, you can't get a line on BetMGM for Saquon Barkley to get more than 50 yards. It's just considered like it's like betting on the sunrise. And you can put together a bet that's like a 25 25 25 or a 50 50 50 with 2 receivers and 1 running back or 2 running backs and 1 wide receiver, and it gives you a rooting interest in the whole game. Can be on either team. Friends don't let friends. Bet on the Chiefs. And honestly, like, why would you try to bet on the Chiefs offense to do anything, especially like score touchdowns? Who knows who's going to get the ball?
They finally scored over 30. They did it.
Almost.
We did it, Joe.
So my bets. Sorry, I didn't have the right tab open. You guys really put me on the spot here.
Yeah, no, you're
trying to get me to not be on the show again.
Yeah.
Who would want to be at this rate?
Somebody had pointed out you're our most frequent guest with it, which I think is unfair considering your contributions to the show. But
there's no way. There's got to be like division media people that are on more often than me. I'm like Sideshow Bob.
Bart D.
Yeah, exactly. Although that joke hits a little different nowadays. Okay, so for the Super Bowl, I've got a 25, 25, 25. Dallas Goedert to pick up 25 receiving yards. Devontae Smith to record 25 receiving yards and Marquise Brown to record 25 receiving yards. These all seem like fairly obvious outcomes, right?
Well, the Marquise Brown one's not as obvious. That one seems like the odds booster of this parlay.
Yeah, exactly. And that's kind of the way I approach all of them. There's two pretty obvious outcomes and one, maybe coin flip a little bit or a 60-40 either way to kind of juice it up a little bit. The idea being that you have one kind of slightly risky outcome with a couple of more likely outcomes added to it as like buffs in parlay form. Perhaps a better example would be the actual 50-50-50. I've got Kareem Hunt to pick up 50 plus rushing yards. Possible. Not necessarily a lock. Not as much of a lock as AJ Brown recording 50 receiving yards or Travis Kelce recording 50 receiving yards, which are the other two parts of this parlay. And that one, at plus 270 is, it feels like the sort of thing to me. A good bet is one that feels good because that's why we're
that's your philosophy.
Well, no, but ostensibly that's why we're doing this, right? If we're being honest with ourselves, we just want a bet that makes us feel good. And I feel great about about two of those outcomes. And,
so it was Kelce, Hunt, and who else?
Kelce, Hunt, and AJ Brown.
Okay. So I was just looking up their actual line. So AJ Brown, for example, his line right now, actually, I just lost it. Oh no. So I've got the Pacheco line, the Hunt line, so the Pacheco line doesn't matter. The Hunt line seems to be about like 45.
It's 48. A little lower. Yes. You could, but I wanted it to be a true 50-50-50. And I get I think I got plus 105 on Kareem Hunt to record 50 rushing yards. So yes, it's a bit of a reach, but again, that's kind of the idea.
And Kelce for 50 plus is minus 200. AJ Brown for 50 plus is minus 300. So
minus 300 or 320 or something. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. It's a good bet that feels good.
Yeah. The last one I have like that is 75, 25, 25. This one is Saquon Barkley to record 75 plus. There's so much thirst on the books to bet up Saquon Barkley, including for him to do something called an octopus, which
the touchdown plus the 2-point conversion.
I know. I was like, what? You just made that up. I had to look that one up. Which
I found that one out 10 minutes before the show. So yeah,
that's right. I was about a half hour ahead of you. But they're really leaning into the 165 yards, whatever. F all that. The Chiefs are really going to be trying their best to shut him down, and who knows? Maybe he pumps the brakes at some point. I mean, unlikely, but at any rate, 75 is much more achievable than 120 or whatever his line is, or 160, which they're offering juicy odds on, or whatever.
75 is like minus probably 450 or something like that.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, they weren't even offering odds on 50 plus.
Mm-hmm. And then the 25s are
the quarterbacks, Jalen Hurts and Patrick Mahomes.
Oh, that's interesting. Okay, so it's tough navigating the Super Bowl odds on some of these websites because you've got a section for player props and that's kind of it, and then you have to navigate through all of the individual players. Anyway, Mahomes 25 plus yards is minus 165. Jalen Hurts 25 yards is minus 300, at least where I was looking. So you've got almost a lock in Jalen Hurts. You've got a pretty good bet in Patrick Mahomes. And then you've got a lock, essentially, for Saquon Barkley.
Yeah, Patrick Mahomes is the only non-mortal lock in that one. And that has total odds of plus 125.
Okay. That's nice.
Yeah, so if you want to distill it down to slightly better than a coin flip that Patrick Mahomes gets more than 25 rushing yards, and you want to get plus 125 for it, it's not the worst.
Mm-hmm.
Not the worst price in the world. So that's my theory of bet is find exploitable matchups.
You've also got F Mahomes on here. You've got If You Believe in Ref Ball on here. What's going on here?
Yeah. So hear a lot about you hear so much about how the refs are in league with the Chiefs, that
Yeah.
Roger Goodell's out here talking about it, and the refs are like, of course the commissioner is correct. That's ridiculous. And I'm like, maybe it's not that you're like biased. Maybe you're just bad. It's a little different question. But if you really believe in ref ball, if you really believe that the Chiefs are the beneficients of penalties, if you really believe that Patrick Mahomes is like the king of drawing offensive pass interference, then put your money where your mouth is and bet the Mahomes passing under.
That's
and also just bet the passing under on Mahomes anyway, because that guy.
Okay, again, James is going to have to edit this, so.
Because F that guy.
Yeah, I don't know.
Mahomes.
I like Mahomes. I think I'm the only one left on the planet who's not a Chiefs fan.
He's doing this fake meta, like we don't whatever. I'll look it up.
Okay.
You do your thing.
Okay.
I gotta look up this quote.
So we got a couple of somewhat normal lines on here. I don't know. I think we can pair a couple of these together, and if whatever betting service you're using allows you to parlay them together in their kind of Croc same game parlay product, I guess is the best way to put it. You might want to do it. But I was thinking, so James put here Saquon Barkley, longest rush under 25.5, minus 110. That would suggest to me that the longest rush over 25.5 is also minus 110. So here's what I'd do. I'd take the under on the longest rush as a sole bet, and then the over on the longest rush combined with MVP Saquon Barkley plus 280, combined with, so FanDuel is offering next-gen stats bets, combined with fastest offensive ball carrier Saquon Barkley minus 112. If you can parlay all of that together, I think you've got a really good outcome there for you, especially if you're betting on the Eagles to win, because it's hard to get the MVP as a member of the losing team. The reason I like fastest offensive ball carrier Saquon Barkley is that he is 4 of the top 20 speeds in next-gen stats fastest ball carriers for the season. Xavier Worthy only has 1, and he and Jalen Hurts are the only 2 that have minus odds for that, and Jalen Hurts does not appear in the top 20 here. Now, the real statistical analysis would be to go like game by game. So I'm not going to do that. For the top 20, that's good enough for me. He's got more than anybody else in the top 20 appearing that many times. So I like all of those together. And then if you get the under on 25.5, you could probably also combine that with the under on his total rushing yards, which I think puts you in a pretty good spot. The game script and the game flow, you should think about how those work together, either in producing your individual bets or in producing your parlays, just because a lot of these things are collinear in the way that a lot of these betting markets work now. They used to just not allow collinear parlays at all. But in order to kind of attract your dollar, get you addicted to their apps, they're now allowing them in like the same game parlay products, and they'll occasionally lock you out of them, but often they won't. So that's just one thing I would kind of keep in mind. Same thing I'd do with James put here Jalen Hurts 2+ touchdowns plus 550 on FanDuel. I'd combine that with the Jalen Hurts Super Bowl MVP thing, just because that's usually how that works. And then I'd also probably combine that with an over on his rushing yards if that was allowed. But yeah, those are the kinds of things that you used to not be able to combine into parlays. And now sometimes you can. I don't know. It's weird. It's weird out there. James, what are your thoughts?
I don't believe you should gamble, and I think instead
Correct.
that it is a fool's errand to do anything involving sports gambling. I'm a wet blanket. I will not be gambling anything this particular year, not just because my state won't let me do it.
That's the only reason.
They're going to come for your podcast license, man. You can't be,
just take it away.
You can't be talking about grandpa like that.
Well, you know what's funny is that they are one of the Native American reservations has purchased land on the south end of Grand Forks, and they are trying to open a casino right outside of town. that is right along the interstate. And the city has basically given them their blessing, which is going to lead to all sorts of problems as far as like the legal side of things, because it's right by a lot of expensive real estate. So that'll be fun. That will probably
love that for you.
That will probably, I'm going to end up playing a lot of poker again. That's all this is going to lead to. is playing poker, inviting Arif to come up, and then winning the money that somebody gave Arif to play poker. It'll be great.
That's happened before. It'll happen again.
Exactly.
Oh, by the way, I have a message for you, Arif.
No, I already tried once. He won't let me pay him back. I'm not doing this.
Arif owes money to a Louisiana politician. I feel like that's the best way to put this. Elected official, a Louisiana elected official.
Yeah, so I should put in the Venmo.
All of my Venmo memos are deeply unserious.
This will be my only public Venmo memo, and also the only serious one. So if that's what he wants, go ahead. But I tried contacting him twice to pay him back. Now I think we're past the statute of limitations on this one.
And I mean, realistically, it's just going to look like a Republican campaign contribution. So do you really need that?
I don't want to do that.
He's literally listed as a Republican on the ticket, isn't he?
Yep.
Yeah. So
looks like you're not getting your money, guy.
In disgust. Kicking dust with his white shoes while he swelters in the New Orleans heat outside the courthouse.
That's Kevin needs to develop a thicker accent if he's going to do that. So, point of all of this is I don't have any opinions on the gambling this time around.
You just put some in here without having an opinion.
Yes, actually. Well, the idea is that this was going to be a concept that this was going to be a topic that you and Dusty were going to talk about, and I assumed Dusty wasn't going to do any research. And so as a result, I put a number of different options in here that could be potentially good.
I feel like you know Dusty better than that. He always does his own research.
Yeah, Dusty famously has been saying for years that you need to do your own research. And something about his body, I don't know, but...
Wait, what about my body? Do you know something I don't?
Something about being a small business owner in Colorado. I don't...
Well, now I feel like I should be worried about it. The way you said that made me more worried.
That's great. Okay, so this next prop... the next prop that I was taking a look at, it looks like I can't combine the Jalen Hurts ones. Doesn't matter. The next prop I was taking a look at was the number of the first touchdown score over 15.5 or under 15.5. So I
was going to ask you about this one. This is basically like, is it going to be a running back or not?
Right? Essentially, right. It's because it's a quarterback. It's under, right? Because Patrick Mahomes' number is 15. Jalen Hurts' number is like 1 or something. I
think AJ Brown's a single digit too.
Yeah, AJ Brown's 11 and Devonta Smith is 6. So, it's basically is it a running back. So the over has a minus 130 odds, which are implied odds of like 55%. The under has plus 100 odds, which is implied odds of 50%. As you'll note, those don't add up to 100%. That's like one thing. If you're just gambling for the first time, you have to understand that difference is the juice. That's how they make their money. So I looked at all the players that by these implied odds are plus 500 or less, which is to say more likely to score a touchdown at any point in the game. Noted their jersey numbers, noted the implied probabilities of an anytime touchdown, and readjusted that to figure out what their odds were to be to score one touchdown if there's only one touchdown, or the first touchdown in this case. And using that in the jersey numbers, I found that the implied odds are like 56.7% for over 15.5 and 43.3% for below 15.5, which you'll note matches the implied odds on the over and gives you great odds on the under. And I think what's happening here is that when people are betting on the number of the first touchdown score, they're basically thinking, is it Saquon Barkley or not? There's a couple more players that are not Saquon Barkley, including Xavier Worthy, whose number is 1, that could score. And so they're narrative crafting, which is pretty dangerous. Here, it looks like the better money is on the under, right? Especially because, like, even though if it's Saquon Barkley, you've got, this guy that's always scoring at the goal line in Jalen Hurts. You've got somebody who scrambles a little bit more in the playoffs than he does in the regular season in Patrick Mahomes. The only thing here that I would kind of keep in mind is that for whatever reason, it seems as if, and I haven't tested this, so certainly do your own research, but it seems as if Travis Kelce gets online late in games, even in the playoffs, more than he does early in games. And so if he's a critical component of your anytime touchdown prop, then I would probably kind of move him around in these implied odds and then bet kind of that it makes it even more likely that I would want to bet the under here. But I think the under is pretty good money. So that's why I go here is the under. I listed all the odds out for the anytime touchdown in the show notes. I'm not going to list them all off, but the players in order of odds are Barkley, Hurts, Kelce, Hunt, Worthy, Brown, Smith, AJ Brown, then Devonta Smith, then Hollywood Brown, then Dallas Goedert, Isaiah Pacheco, and then Patrick Mahomes. So Mahomes is actually really, really low odds to score that first touchdown, so I wouldn't do that. James put in here the game to go to overtime is at plus 1,200. I'm not touching that.
That would be the only thing I'd be interested in betting, other than maybe a missed extra point.
The reason I wouldn't do that is I think both of these coaches would rather go for 2 to seal the game than go to overtime. Maybe I'm wrong about that, but it just feels like that. I don't know. Unless we believe in ref ball.
Yeah, man, this is going to be another bullcrap. Eagles, Chiefs, rigged Super Bowl. They're going to get a bullcrap penalty late in the fourth quarter. The game will be over. However, probably won't.
However,
the sniveling naysayers may be correct in this instance. Purely by happenstance.
Okay.
I like some of these Swifty special bets that I'm seeing here. I don't.
One of the websites had a full one of the websites had a full list of them. I liked 22 and blank space.
Yeah.
Yeah, some of these Swifties are good.
Travis Kelce to record 22 plus receiving yards in each half. Given what you were saying, which is true about Kelce taking a little while to heat up for them to find a spot for him in the offense. Second half easy. First half that could be a little bit of a sweat.
Yeah, that could be tough. The yes is plus 110 and the no is minus 140. So that would suggest that others are thinking along the same lines here. Also, it's difficult to record just like that if you're not the primary receiving weapon. And I don't know that there is a primary receiving weapon for the Chiefs. So I don't know. It's tough to record over 20 in both halves, but
and that's the most annoying thing about the Chiefs. They've got so many different weapons. Travis Kelce could easily go 0 receptions and 2 targets in the first half, or he could have 4 catches for 60 yards.
Yeah, it's brutal. But yeah, so there's that. There's other Swifty specials. All of them, or not all of them. Some of them are Travis Kelce related. The one to record a reception for 19 plus yards and then also have 89 plus total receiving yards, which is the 1989 Swifty special, of course. That's plus 300. Yeah, that sounds good. I'll take that. I don't know.
If that's real, hit it.
Yeah.
I might open a Bet365 account just to bet on that.
Yeah, we're not sponsored. Also from Bet365, another Swifty special. Everything has changed. Chiefs to come from behind and take the lead in the fourth quarter. Now, they don't have to win the game. They just have to, at some point, take the lead in the fourth quarter from behind. To me, I don't know. They just always do this. So, again...
Does it count if they win as time is expiring?
I believe so. I believe that counts. I would take the yes on this. It's plus 200. Again, I'm going off of vibes. This is Dusty's advice to go off of vibes, of course. So... I'm taking the yes plus 200 on this. The no is minus 250, almost not worth betting at all anyway. Yeah. And then will any 300-pound player score a touchdown? Now, if the Lions were in this game, the odds would be radically different.
Correct.
And if the Ravens were in this game, it would be kind of different because of Patrick Ricard. But the yes is plus 2,500. The no is minus 10,000. The Chiefs do like trick plays. I have not seen many of their trick plays go to offensive linemen. I also don't see that with the Eagles all that often. So to me, I'm just not touching this one. I'm surprised they even offer odds on the no because it's just like you're just throwing your money away. They're not throwing your money away. You're just getting nothing back for it. Fourth down conversions I put in here over 2.5 plus 140. I'm gonna take it. The Commanders Eagles game had, I think, a record 6 attempts on fourth down. And obviously the Commanders were like the second most likely to go for it on fourth down in the league this year. But it just feels like, the Eagles obviously have that capacity. The Chiefs don't quarterback sneak anymore ever since the Patrick Mahomes injury. They should reconsider it, but okay. But they do convert a fair number of fourth downs. 2.5 was really low to me for a plus 140. So I would take the yes on this one. Maybe I'm just narrative crafting at this point, but that one seems like not a no-brainer, but like a pretty easy one.
I mean, I think if you look at the way both teams have played in the playoffs, it's very easy to see a path to 3 fourth down conversions between both teams.
Yeah, exactly. I don't know anything about the national anthem one. So, Dusty, have you looked into the national anthem?
My hunch on this one is that it depends on how you feel. Is the president going to want a longer national anthem because he's there, or a shorter one?
I would think a shorter one because
my instinct is shorter.
Yeah. So the singer is John Batiste. I don't know how long he would take to sing a national anthem. The over-under is at 121 seconds. The under's at minus 130. The over's at plus 100. So at some point, once it gets to minus 160 or so range, it'll probably change to 120 seconds. But that's where we're at.
A lot of them have been going over the last few years.
Yeah, that's a good point. But I remember a couple years ago, it was like at 119. I've seen them at 117. So I think that the odds have been adjusted for the fact that they've been going over. I don't know anything about John Batiste, so I've got nothing to add to this one. Dusty?
Yeah, purely the worst kind of vibes. Like everything has changed. Swifty Special has the best kind of vibes because it's a good price. Like plus 200 is my sucker price for pretty much any like long shot bet. I'm like, sure, I'll take a shot at 4-1. Why not? But that, like, if it hits, I feel great. If the Eagles win, I also feel great. Like, it guarantees immaculate vibes at the end of the game. This other thing does not.
Okay, fair enough. Any non-quarterback to record a passing touchdown plus 2,000. I take this every year. It has netted a profit, although sometimes it feels like a game where it's obviously going to happen and it doesn't. I think the 2017 Super Bowl for the 2016 season was the one where I was desperately looking for it and it didn't happen. I was so mad because they had 2 receivers who played quarterback and have thrown passes in the NFL. One of whom had like a perfect passer rating in the NFL. It was the Falcons receiver. I already forgot his name. He has stopped playing football because that was in 2016 and he was a veteran at that point. And that didn't happen. And I was kind of jaded about this bet, but I've continued betting it and it has continued producing a net profit. So I'm going to do it again because I love it. It just feels like it doesn't have to be a Philly special, which is, I think, the way a lot of people are looking at this. But I could totally, we saw Dontari Poe throw a touchdown. Obviously, he's not in the Chiefs anymore. We know that the Chiefs are capable of doing this. We know that, even though that was the Doug Peterson Eagles, we know that, a lot of players in the team are familiar with what happened there and might like that again. So I like the plus 2,000 on this one. Also, it's a fun bet. It's one of the fun bets. You just feel kind of good if you hit it. Vibes
are good with field bets in general. It's nice to have a large quiver full of arrows to choose a win from.
Yeah. James put in the color liquid that'll be poured on the winning coach. They this time did not specify Gatorade, which I thought was funny. What's interesting here is that the odds are really different across different books. Because I looked at this on, where is it? Is it just like Super Bowl specials? I don't know. But I was looking at this on FanDuel, and I got like different odds for the same order, right? But different odds on these colors. So James listed plus 100 for purple. On FanDuel, it's plus 195. Yellow, green, also the same order, plus 200 with James's odds, plus 230 on FanDuel, plus 600 for blue. Blue is fourth on FanDuel at plus 700, but it's pretty close. Orange is plus 750. It's plus 440 on FanDuel. So unless you think it's orange, your better odds are almost always on FanDuel than, I assume this is like Bet365 or something like that. There's also red and pink, which is plus 1100 there. It's plus 850 on FanDuel, but at that point, it's not likely. And then clear and or water is plus 1,200 there, plus 1,000 on FanDuel. So again, those are lower odds. But I think for most of the Gatorade colors or whatever liquid it is, that sounds ominous. Your better odds are typically going to be on FanDuel. Yeah, whatever liquid.
Something, it's murky gator wine. That's what it is.
Questionable viscosity. So if you were price shopping for bets on the color of Gatorade or liquid, I guess.
Liquid.
Would you tell me?
Would I tell you if I was price shopping?
Are you going around trying to like bet on every color and get the best price for it so that you can like are you trying to martingale this?
So if you bet $10 or $100 or whatever on every single color and just took the best odds you could find for each of those colors at a bunch of different books, would I tell you that I was engaging in such an activity? Is that what you're asking? Yeah, I would probably tell you that.
Are you doing that?
I would never bet in the state of Minnesota.
Understood. If you were not in Minnesota, would you do that?
I deeply consider it, yes.
See, that's not even really gambling. That's just arbitrage.
Yeah. We're just playing the stock market here.
It's encouraged. It's actually safer than the stock market.
It's weirdly true. I don't like that.
I know, right? I probably said that like 10 years ago, ironically. Here we are. Now here we are.
So I think that's it for the bet, because I didn't have a ton of bets to add here because I didn't find many halftime show bets, at least not on FanDuel. Let's take I'm going to Google this live during the show. Halftime Super Bowl props.
This always goes well. Although I am trying to imagine a scenario where Kendrick Lamar just plays Not Like Us like 5 times in a row. Like I don't need to do anything else. I'm just going to play this 5 times in a row just to dance on the grave of Drake.
Yeah, there's
got to be a way to bet on that being the last song, right? I mean, that's got to be the shirtless Anthony Kiedis of his generation. Yeah. Kendrick ending this concert with Not Like Us.
For those who don't remember, there was an episode a few years ago where we were going over the prop bets. Yeah, I know.
Quite a few.
The year that the year
that like our inaugural
someone conceived after that episode aired would be in elementary school.
Yeah, I don't like that. I don't like that knowledge at all. However, there was an episode years ago. Is that better? Do you feel better about yourself now? You shouldn't.
No, I feel worse.
Yeah,
thanks, Dusty.
Good. Thanks, Dusty.
I do too.
So years ago, there was an episode, and that year, the Red Hot Chili Peppers did the halftime show, and one of the bets was, will Anthony Kiedis be shirtless at any point during the performance? And we were pounding the table, going, this is a license to print money. Please put your child's college fund in this bet. And it absolutely paid out immediately.
I think it was one of our only Stone Cold locks of the week.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
That was the lock of the week of the century.
Yeah, we were like very happy about this, and then of course, I don't think he ever had a shirt.
No,
actually,
he did not.
So.
He absolutely did not. And they lip synced the whole time too, which was also fun. But like he was absolutely shirtless while lip syncing. That was the important part.
Perfect.
Any luck with halftime props?
Actually, no. And this is another example of how Google is getting worse. I'm getting a bunch of articles that are giving me a bunch of props, which include 1 or 2 halftime props, like over under 10.5 songs, which I don't care about. I want halftime props like what's the first song, what's the last song, will there be another power outage?
This has not been the year for it. I looked and I couldn't find them. So you got them on FanDuel, Dusty?
Okay. Yep. Yeah. Oh, I was looking on FanDuel. Couldn't find it. Well, I've got some at Sportsbook Review. So I'll list those off and then you tell me which ones I miss on FanDuel or if there's arbitrage to be had here. So the first, so I'll just put the table into the Google Doc, but the first song odds are pretty interesting to me for Kendrick Lamar. The table pastes perfectly. Great. So, the first song odds of Not Like Us are plus 380, which is the second ranked. Yeah. And then Humble is plus 160. So that's the favorite. I don't know. Like I really do think that you're right about this. Your instinct on Not Like Us is that it'll probably be the end. He's got King Kunta and Squabble Up. I think that Squabble Up has actually got really great odds to be the first one because I think you want stuff from the new album. And then you can get into the stuff that everyone's like familiar with, like Humble and DNA. DNA is plus 500. I feel like it's definitely in the set list. I don't know about beyond that. ADHD is plus 500. Euphoria plus 600. I don't see Euphoria in there at all. I don't know. What do you think?
I'm going to defer to your judgment on this. Fine. Reddit, come after me. I don't like Kendrick Lamar.
Wow. Okay. Yeah. That's crazy.
Not like actively dislike, but it's just I don't connect with his sound.
That makes you a bad person. Anyway.
I know.
I know.
Just look me up. Come and get me. This is it. This is what gets me, huh, Kendrick?
You can find me by way of my political contributions. I'm sorry.
Look at me and Drake going down. Just collateral damage.
Well, we've also got halftime show celebrity guest odds. I don't know if you can contribute to that, but Future and Metro Boomin are at minus 125. They're joint favorites. I'm kind of surprised I don't see Mustard on here, but sure. Baby Keem is plus 110. Lil Wayne is plus 164. Future. Okay, the website said Future's at minus 125, and so is Metro Boomin, but the table it gives me was both at plus 184. So Baby Keem and Lil Wayne must have been bet up or something like that since that.
I wonder if something changed. I mean, the smart money is on Future apparently, but I mean, I think there's probably if you wanted a long shot or a left field, I would say maybe Doechii.
Yeah, that makes sense. I do like that Drake is on here at plus 9,500.
Oh my God.
I also like, but that one's just really funny. I do like Schoolboy Q at plus 600. I think that's really good. So I'm going to put that as my bet. Doechii at plus 210. And let's do Future at plus 184. Those are my 3 bets.
Yeah, I'm with Future and Doechii. I would really like to cross-reference this with a list of artists who are on tour right now, so I cannot make a stupid choice. But,
nope, we're doing this off of vibe.
But Doechii was just at the Grammys, so
yeah. I think there's a media tour here. Taylor Swift at plus 750 is very funny. There are definitely people betting on that.
Oh my God, there's no way. Can you imagine? Although, like, if you were. Because, like, think about the show with Jay Cutler and his wife and just, like, the drama that they would get into living their, like, impossibly boring lives.
Yeah.
Imagine if you're Travis Kelce, like, training for the Super Bowl and you're dating the girl that's, like, training for the Super Bowl halftime show and, like, trying to produce and coordinate all that to go off in the same place at the same day. Like, I mean, that would be good reality television.
That sounds like a bad plot. Like that, like a bad movie.
Coming to Netflix in 2026.
Wait,
Taylor
wasn't
and Travis
there a
at the Super
Lifetime?
Bowl.
Wasn't there like a Lifetime movie that was like the Travis Kelce Taylor Swift story? Like, I feel like that was something that like just aired.
Already?
Yes, this was a thing. This was a thing recently.
Arif?
I haven't watched a Netflix movie in a while. The last Netflix movie I watched was at my brother's when we were watching bad Christmas Netflix shows. So I've got nothing.
Christmas in the Spotlight is a Lifetime Christmas movie inspired by the romance between Taylor Swift and Travis Kelce. The movie premiered November 23rd, 2024.
This sounds awful.
Oh, absolutely.
Okay, off-season project. We got to watch that.
And not just in that lip service way where we say we're going to do it and we don't. We actually do need to watch this.
The Christmas episode should just be a watch along.
It's like, yeah, that is awful. Yes, Christmas in the Spotlight is the name of it. So yes, that there was in fact a Lifetime movie about it. I'm going to stop talking because I feel like I just made everyone's life worse by telling you about its existence. I'm trying not to be dusty, so yeah, I'm gonna mute myself again.
Will Kendrick Lamar wear a hoodie for his first song? Yes, -128. No, -102. What do we feel about that?
That's got to be your Anthony Kiedis bet.
Yeah, I think that's a yes because I think he has to take the hoodie off for Humble. I'm going with yes.
I have used all of my celebrity clothing guessing mana already, so I will defer to your judgment in this case.
All right, I think that's it. I think we nailed the Super Bowl props. At some point, I assume James will actually record what bets we decided to take, and then report back. Sorry, James.
That's why we have a Discord
after the fact.
No, this is why we have a Discord. Our Discord will save us.
Great.
Thank you, Discord.
Someone in the Discord do this.
Make us very, very pleased.
It's good to have minions.
Always has been. Well, if we're done with the prop bet portion of our episode, we can get into the mailbag, and we do have a number of football questions here in the mailbag to ask. So
that's wild.
The first question is from Luke Braun's dad. Have we healed from the pain? And Dusty's pain was different because he was a Broncos fan this year and had to cheer on Bo Nix and Sean Payton.
I think so. In order to answer that question, I'll tell a story about me telling a story, but I won't tell the story that I told. I was recapping portions of my life for a lot of people I was hanging out with during the Shrine Bowl and the Senior Bowl, and then also for like another friend, right? And one portion of my life that I kind of recapped was the story of how I told my first crush that I had a crush on her, and it went hilariously bad, just catastrophically bad. And I would argue that it was less that I healed from that pain and more that I look back upon that pain with fond remembrance, right? It's a funny story. It, was like a formative moment in my life, getting absolutely dunked on by my crush. And so I would say that a lot of Vikings fans have historically used the Vikings as a method of sharing pain with each other, but that doesn't mean that the pain is gone. It just means that we're reinterpreting and reshaping what that pain means for us. And I think that that's what this season is going to be too. That this pain is just, another element in the grand like tapestry of the narrative of the Vikings, right? Of what they do to us. And we enjoy being victims. Like that's like you see Vikings fans argue with like fan bases of other miserable teams about how they're the most miserable. Why would you do that if you didn't at least in some capacity enjoy that you get to do that? So no, you haven't really healed from the pain. But I think that we're right now in the process of kind of reformulating what that pain means for us. And I think we're most of the way through that process already.
Yeah. To paraphrase a Rick and Morty episode, our bodies are unchanged, yet our minds have lived 1,000 lifetimes. I don't know if that's enough time for me to forgive the Minnesota Vikings, but here we are. Dusty, what did you say before the show? Something about the horrors persist?
Oh yeah, the horrors persist, and so do we.
There we go. So that's kind of where we're
Oddly
at.
Comforting.
Yes, right? It's comforting. That's the word we're looking for. Skull Rant asks, we talk a lot about the $70+ million in cap space, and the Wilfs are usually good about spending, but is it normal for teams to use all of their available cap? All that
taken in the most little. What was that?
All that to say, do you think Kwesi would really use every cent, draft notwithstanding, to fill out the defensive tackle, interior line, defensive back in free agency?
In the most literal sense, no team uses all their cap, but functionally, a lot of teams get pretty close. In the Spielman era, the Vikings entered the season with about $10-15 million in cap space so that they had some flexibility during the season to kind of resolve problems as they came up, which is how they were able to do stuff like trade, mid-season for players like, maybe Sam Bradford, I don't know. But also like grab players like off the waiver wire, like Alfred Blue or whoever. I don't think that that's all that different in the Kwesi era. I think that you're going to enter the regular season with at least $5, if not $10 million in cap space. But yeah, teams typically, like, there are a bunch of teams that there are just going to be some years where they enter the season with $40 million in cap. I think a lot of fans look at that and think, hey, that's like malpractice. Why wouldn't you do as much as you can to try and win? But there's like two things. One, if you're losing battles in free agency, like you're trying to sign a $15 million a year guard and you lose out, that doesn't mean there's another player worth $15 million that you now have the capacity to sign. They might not just be on the market at all. So that's like one. Two, that cap space rolls over into the next year. And so it's not going to waste. So there are a lot of teams that do that. The Vikings, it seems like typically have not been one of those teams. Again, we're in a new era, new general manager. So all of that can change. But that I think is... I think the Vikings are going to use that for reasons that are essentially outlined in the next question.
Well, the next question is from Iowa Josh, who asks, $70 million doesn't seem like that much money when you have to re-sign all the free agents that we have. Seems like it would work better if we had all our draft picks. Are we playing broken money ball?
That's interesting. It would work better if we had all our draft picks. No, I just think that the Vikings like set up a bunch of contracts to expire at around the same time. I don't think there's anything broken here because I think that the Vikings, made a bunch of moves in previous drafts that included, attempting to trade up for Drake May. That didn't work out. So they ended up, grabbing Dallas Turner and JJ McCarthy, and they're just paying that price now. It's not like they traded, a first round pick for a player or anything like that. I think, obviously besides TJ Hawkinson, they really haven't spent that much draft capital in this era on trades. So I don't think it's like a version of broken money ball. I think it's just the way that the contracts worked out. When you take a look at the top 7 or 8 teams in free agency this year, none of them have the number of free agents that the Vikings are seeing hit free agency. But also, the Vikings, none of them can have the number of snaps because the Vikings rank first in the NFL in the number of snaps hitting free agency. Now, some of those players are probably not going to resign. Like Stephon Gilmore, I would be surprised if they resigned him unless he signed for like $4 million or something way less than what he signed for this year. But some of them, they're going to want to re-sign, players like Byron Murphy or maybe potentially Shaq Griffin, right? They're going to probably want to sign one of the, 4 safeties that are hitting free agency, basically everyone except Josh Metellus. I think that there's a lot less flexibility here than you would have elsewhere, but also like this presents an opportunity to replace somebody like a Stephon Gilmore with a more efficient player. And I've said this before that the way people view free agency contracts sometimes is a little screwed up. They assume that a player that costs twice as much should be twice as good, and that's not really how it works. You get marginally better, and it costs a lot more. There's an analogy used by Brian Burke, who's now at ESPN, but he was over at Advanced Football Analytics, and his analogy was like bricklayers versus gladiators. You can, in a theoretical sense, so this is like how economists talk, and obviously that's screwed up, but you can hire as many bricklayers as you want, and the more you hire, the faster you will accomplish your various construction tasks. And a bricklayer that lays bricks at twice the rate of the average bricklayer should cost twice as much, because otherwise you could just hire two instead of have that one. There are obviously like a bunch of different reasons that wouldn't necessarily be the case, but for the purposes of the analogy, you kind of get where I'm going. But football is a constrained environment. You can only put 11 players on the field at a time, and only one guy gets to throw the ball, the quarterback. And so that market would be something closer to a gladiatorial market, where if you're 10% better or than the opponent, you're going to be worth quite a bit more, because only one outcome matters here, and it's the win. And so if you're 1% better, 2% better, 3% better than the average opponent, you're going to command a greater than 1 to 3% increase in your salary. And so typically what I tell people is, you're not attempting to be the most efficient team. You're not trying to maximize the wins above replacement per dollar spent on each individual player. At some point, you're going to realize that you have a team in a cap environment of, say, like $300 million. You're going to have a team that's the most efficient team in the world with $150 million in cap space. And you're going to lose most of your games, even though you've got the most wins above replacement per dollar. At some point, you have to be inefficient in your spending and increase the total number of wins rather than the wins per dollar. And that means you're going to have to spend money on free agents that are not twice as good but cost twice as much, because there is a limit to the number of players you can put on the field, and every marginal increase increases your winning odds by a lot more than you would think by the simple math of just kind of linear calculations. So that's something to keep in mind too. Like, the Moneyball stuff here is actually really difficult to parse out in a cap environment and in a limited player environment where you can only put 11 on the field at the same time. And of course it's not, and it gets more complicated by the fact that like you've got different personnel packages. So you might pay a lot for a second tight end or for a fullback that you wouldn't if you only ever put 11 players on the field. Same thing with a third linebacker or a nickel corner or like a third safety. Like it gets complicated how this math works.
Well, let's go to our next question, which is going to be from Ben, who asks, who are the top trade-away candidates if the Vikings want to gain more draft capital?
That's really tough, because so we did something like this on the Minnesota Football Party, where we tried to figure out who the Vikings could cut and save some cap space with. But the top cut candidates are not your top trade candidates. Like Josh Oliver, for example, his trade value is minimal because of his contract, which is like $9.4 million in cap space this year. Now, if you trade him, you take on $4.3 million in dead money, and the team that takes him grabs $5 million. Depending on like how the contract is structured and like that, but that's what it seems like. And maybe a team wants him at $5 million, and then you could do, but you have to take on that $4 million in cap space. So he's up there, but I don't know if he's like the best trade candidate. Harrison Phillips would be kind of interesting. I think he's a really good player, so I don't really want to trade him. But he's interesting because we're in a spot where you've got a really great defensive tackle draft. So I don't know that anybody would want to trade for him, even though he would only cost $2 million for them to be on their roster. After that, I think it gets kind of tough. I mean, obviously, you could franchise Sam Darnold and trade him. We're not going to count that. But like Bradbury is an interesting trade candidate, because you would only take on, or the Vikings would only take on $2.5 million in cap space. The team that trades for him grabs him for $3.5 million. That's not a bad deal for a player like Bradbury, who obviously isn't amazing or anything like that, but it's a good fit for some schemes. If, for example, Drew Dahlman doesn't re-sign with the Falcons, you could trade Bradbury to the Falcons, who run a scheme that is friendly to what Bradbury does. And then, you might be able to get a 5th round pick for him, because that's a pretty cheap contract. So maybe that. I wouldn't trade Blake Cashman. I'm trying to look at some of these other guys. Maybe Blake Brandel, I don't know, but I think the Vikings are going to have him compete with whoever they get at guard. So probably not. Maybe Ed Ingram. Maybe a team feels like they can kind of fix what he can do. They would take on about a $3 million cap hit to grab him. I don't know. He's probably going to go for like a 6th-round pick or something like that. But there's not a ton of trade candidates here. The Vikings obviously don't have a ton of draft capital. They're missing the regular third. They're going to get a compensatory third. But they've got the first, second, compensatory third. It's not as much as a lot of other teams. Or first and compensatory third. I don't think Anyway, I don't know that you can make up for the lacking draft capital here for the Vikings with their trade candidates unless you package a lot of them together. Then at some point you have to get a starting center if you do that. You have to figure out what you're going to do at second tight end if you do that. You have to get a starting guard if you trade Ed Ingram. Like that's just, you probably already had to get those guys, but like making it a huge need and only getting like a 5th or 6th in return, that's a difficult place to be.
Let's go to the next question, which is from Roro, who asks, how much more expensive did Brian Murphy get after being named Pro Bowl defensive MVP?
I'm going to be honest, when someone mentioned that to me, I was surprised that they played the game this year. I thought they weren't doing that anymore, which would explain why like Justin Herbert would opt out of being like a Pro Bowl alternate, because at some point there is a game that gets played.
Not only was there a game that got played, but Drake May threw, was it 2 pick sixes or just 1 pick six and 2 interceptions? Either way, it was quite funny.
Picks in the Pro Bowl game?
Yep, sure did.
Wow. I assume Byron Murphy was one of them if you got the defensive MVP.
Yes. It was
okay. Well,
I didn't watch. I just saw clips of it. It was not.
Yeah, now I'm going to look for clips of it. This is the first time learning that Drake May throw a pick six on another pick. Yeah.
In other news, Drake May was a player in the Pro Bowl this year.
Yeah, surprise. He did not do well in the passing skills competition, which I did watch. Not the game, but the passing skills competition, where Sam Darnold got second to like Jared Goff. That's incredible. Good job, dude. He
did quite well. It did cause a number of people to go, dude, what the hell? And rightfully so.
Yeah, he's too expensive now. Oops.
Yep.
Thanks for getting a couple of picks.
Yeah. Actually, I've always found that for whatever reason, if you're like really trying on defense, you end up winning. Like you end up getting. You remember the was it Sean Taylor who had just like cleaned somebody's clock on a return?
Yeah. I remember Adrian Peterson took it seriously.
Yep. If you take it seriously, there's a real good shot you're going to end up getting MVP.
I also remember Kyle Rudolph getting MVP, even though he wasn't taking it seriously because the Pro Bowl positions were all screwed up. I think they still are. Where Clay Matthews was a linebacker, but they play 4-3 defenses in the Pro Bowl, so he's an off-ball linebacker who has to cover because he's an edge rusher, right? He doesn't cover people. And so he had to cover Kyle Rudolph, and it was just like touchdown after touchdown.
It's the best day he ever had. Let's go to Ars Lub. Sure. Asks, should the Vikings be prioritizing pass rush or coverage this draft? They don't seem to be able to generate much pressure up the middle without blitzing, but they also have a bare cupboard on the back end.
So a lot of the modern analytics movement will tell you that coverage is more important than pass rush. It's obviously a very difficult thing to parse because they complement one another, right? You know, the faster your pass rush gets to the quarterback, the less time you have to spend in coverage. The longer you can cover, the easier it is for your pass rush to get to the quarterback, and so on, right? I would argue that in the particular Vikings defensive setup, first of all, they're just going to keep blitzing. So if they can get pressure with blitzing, but not without blitzing, it's not that big a deal. You still want to be able to do it, right? Like you want to have as many options available to you as possible, and you don't want to be reliant on one kind of thing. But so obviously it's good to have a good pass rush, but I would argue that given the number of defensive backs hitting free agency, basically all of them, you probably want to prioritize getting some good defensive backs in the building. But B, I think that when you do have like a heavy blitzing scheme, that your coverage is going to matter even more because often quarterbacks will attempt to get rid of the ball before pressure even materializes. It's just you get rid of it quickly because there's a blitz, and you're going to want to be able to cover really, really well if you do that. So yeah, I would prioritize coverage in general because that is on a top level a little bit more important, even if it's more volatile. And then specifically for the Vikings, because these cornerbacks get put on islands all the time. So I would definitely prioritize coverage.
Next question is going to be from Alexander, who asks, how would you evaluate this year's draft in terms of strength of position, and what are the weak/strong points of the draft?
Yeah, so I was talking to people at the Senior Bowl about the draft because that is right now my familiarity with it. I don't really have like a good sense of the players in the draft, but generally speaking, it very much seems like the defensive line is one of the strongest defensive line drafts, one of the strongest positions of the draft, and it happens to be one of the strongest defensive line drafts that we've seen in a very, very long time. That includes edge rusher and interior defensive linemen. So you've got edge rushers like James Pierce. You've got edge rushers like Abdul Carter, who some people are calling generational. People love using that term. But you've also got players like Mason Graham and Kenneth Grant from Michigan, who are just incredible athletes that are really good. You've got Shamar Stewart, who I remember watching at the Senior Bowl, just absolutely demolish people. He was outstanding. This is supposed to be like just a really, really good interior defensive line draft. But again, there's great edge rushers too. So Walter Nolan at defensive line, Derek Harmon at defensive line, and then edge rusher I mentioned. I mentioned Shamar Stewart. I also mentioned Nick Scorton, or I also saw Mike Green at the Senior Bowl. I know Nick Scorton was there. I don't know if he practiced or not. I didn't actually watch any of those reps. But you also have going into the second round, a lot of these same players. So Landon Jackson from Arkansas. You've got the Ole Miss edge rusher whose name I'm not crazy familiar with. I know that his get off time is elite. I think James Pierce, Jah Joyner, and Princely are all insane, bursty athletes at the edge, which we haven't seen this kind of level of athleticism off of the first step in a long time. So that's probably the biggest strength of the draft. I asked around about cornerback because I know obviously the Vikings need that. I'm being told that this is like an average cornerback class. So nothing to say that you absolutely have to get one this year because of how good it is, but nothing to say that it's a bad time to get a corner. I asked around about the offensive line. It seems like this is last year kind of spoiled us because that was an insane offensive line class. It seems like a better than average offensive line group, but mostly in the second and third rounds, there's a lot of players, not so much a really high level top of the draft. So I think there's a tackle from Texas and a tackle from Oregon that people are really big fans of. Also, maybe an Ohio State tackle, I don't know. But very much it seems like the bottom of the first round, where you've got, Minnesota offensive lineman, you've got an Alabama offensive lineman, Tyler Booker, Arante Irsary from Minnesota. It seems like that's a better than average class just in terms of depth. And then at wide receiver, I mean, all of this kind of the cornerback, wide receiver stuff kind of depends on Travis Hunter, how teams see him. But at wide receiver, it just seems like same thing with the offensive tackle group. We're going to get some better wide receiver classes in the future, but you've got some pretty good ones like Luther Burden. The Ohio State wide receiver, Ibuka, I think he graduates as the all-time receiving leader at Ohio State. And he's never been the best receiver that they whenever he's been on that team, which is just kind of an insane thing to have. That's interesting to me. This is supposed to be one of the best running back classes that we've ever seen in a long time, at least since the, McCaffrey, Fournette, Mixon, Cook, insane running back class from a couple years ago, from 2017. This is supposed to be, even better than that. One scout told Jeremy Fowler it's like two running back classes combined into one. So that's something to kind of pay attention to. And then everyone already has an opinion on the quarterback group. The top two quarterbacks, Shedeur Sanders and Cam Ward, are not quarterbacks that a lot of people would consider to be, would not have even been top quarterbacks in last year's draft compared to the six that went. Might be second rounders in other drafts, but because teams need quarterbacks, are pushed into the first round. And then it just gets so thin after that. A lot of people like Jackson Dart, which is their right, I guess. They're allowed to do that. And then Jalen Milroe, who a lot of people tell me should just be a running back, and based off of what I saw in Mobile, he's not a bad plan. Quinn Ewers, who I don't think is all that outstanding. Yeah, it's not a good quarterback class. So those are my thoughts there.
Corey Rug asks, down the stretch, it seemed like the offensive line regressed across the board. Is that easily explained with a Darrisaw injury, or is it coaching, Darnold, or talent explanation for the regression?
Well, I think the Darrisaw injury had a huge impact on that. But remember, that occurred at about the same time, or exactly the same time that Dalton Reisner replaced Blake Brandel. Replaced Ed Ingram, which is its own thing. I think Reisner's a better player than Ingram, but it caused a couple of problems, primarily in the communication between everybody. And so you've got, this left guard communicating with a new left tackle, Cam Robinson, and then you've got a center and a right tackle communicating with a new right guard, a guy who is more at home at left guard anyway. And I think all of that together is a big reason that you ended up having regression along the offensive line. It's not something I'm worried about heading into next year because they'll have an offseason together, and hopefully there's not going to be any injuries along the offensive line. And if there is, there's only going to be one offensive line change as a result of it. But you've got like an elite set of tackles, so I'm not too worried about that heading into next year. But I think it was mostly like all of these changes kind of occurring at once, and then trying to get back into your stride. I don't think it's a coaching thing. I don't think it's a Sam Darnold thing. I think it was just like, hey, we just replaced like two guys at once.
Nick Wilson asks, now that the NFL has officially addressed the refs favoring the Chiefs conspiracy, does that mean the refs are now on the open market? And if so, can we afford them with our cap space?
Well, I mean, the conspiracy is kind of the realm of Dusty. I want to know what his take is.
I mean, typically I would say yes, but this may not be the time. Might want to let the heat die down. What was the guy in baseball? Pat Hoberg just went down for gambling.
Yep. That's
it's too bad.
I like the announcement. There was one official that was involved. That was it.
Don't worry about it. Yep. Just the one.
We got him, guys. We don't have to look at this anymore.
A big mission accomplished. Yeah, exactly. A big mission accomplished banner just rolls down behind them.
A fighter jet. I think the saddest thing about this whole deal is, I think it was 2 or 3 years ago, Pat Hoberg called a perfect game in the World Series.
Oh, man.
Every strike a strike, every ball a ball.
Rip.
Yeah, one of the greats. So you don't end up like him. I would say maybe don't try to buy off the refs just yet.
Not for a couple of years.
Cost?
I mean, a lot of refs have kind of 6-figure jobs at home. Like, it's kind of tough, actually. Typically, it doesn't cost as much as you would think to buy off an official, based off of what we know about the history of buying off officials across professional sports, both inside and outside the United States. Does not cost that much.
Yeah. I would. I'd probably need about $350.
Yeah, well, you're an easy one to buy off. But if we're talking like people who are like lawyers in their professional lives, you would need more than like the 5,000 that we've seen. Like, I think one ref for a Premier League game got bought for $5,000, just a crazy good investment. That's a great deal. Yeah. But I think you would.
What kind of people are reffing these games?
Yeah, I think you would need like a year's salary, I think, in the NFL. I think you need $100,000, $150,000. And that's going to buy you way more than 1/5 of a minimum value player or a practice squad player, which is what that typically costs. So, yeah, I mean, that's a good deal. You just the risk is just in getting caught, right? It's not in the risk of you not getting your money's worth.
Yeah, absolutely. It's the Deflategate situation.
Right.
I figure $50,000 you'd wake up in the morning for, and then I guess see where it goes. You don't want to end up like Michael Porter Jr.'s brother, where he tried to
Jonte Porter.
Yeah, Jonte Porter. Yeah, and the what was it, rebound shaving or point shaving or something? Whatever he did, it was dumb as hell, and he got caught right away.
Yeah, he would be active for games, and then he'd be like injured or sick or whatever. So it was everything shaving. He was getting unders on rebounds, points, everything. So yeah, and it was for not very much at all.
And see, that's, I would just, if I was going to do something like that, I would just try to buy refs for like one call. I wouldn't invest in them for a whole season. That just seems like, I mean, I'm not doing this for NFL wins, obviously. I'm just doing this to make a bunch of money.
Right. Well, yeah, I guess it depends on who you are and what you're doing it for.
Yeah. Well, let's get to our next question, which is from Charles, who asks, if the tush push were to be banned, how would you do it? How might the rule be worded? Please take inspiration from the fact that Luke Braun was too afraid of this question to answer it on Locked On Vikings.
Wow. Coward. Classic coward. Yeah, I would just say you can't... I mean, you used to not be able to push a ball carrier at all, right? So why not just amend the rule to reinstate the rule, except you can't push a ball carrier inside the tackle box in the offensive backfield. Done. With that, easy. Why is that the way? Why was he scared to answer that?
Just scared to answer it. Damian Bullsharif asks, is McCowan interviewing for a head coaching position unusual? Isn't there an inherent tiering system amongst coaching positions? And what is the largest jump between these tiers for a head coaching hire outside of interim posts?
Yeah, like when Freddie Kitchens went from running back coach to head coach in one offseason.
Well, or you're looking at Chicago, and eventually you're in charge of the whole thing, and you were barely in charge of the quarterbacks before.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, Zach Taylor was hired directly from quarterback coach to head coach, so that happens. I don't know that there's any non-quarterback coach position where that's happened. We do have a special teams coordinator as a head coach in John Harbaugh. But yeah, I mean, typically, obviously, it's a coordinator position. And then when it's not a coordinator position, it's like an assistant head coach or assistant to the head coach or whatever, right? It's a Gary Kubiak type thing. I don't know that we see it outside of quarterback coach among the position coaches. Outside of the interim, I'm sure there's like a listener who has like a good counterexample, but was Mike Tice or like, did he go directly from offensive line? Now I'm going to look. But I can't, because that would be jumping the hierarchy, I guess. You'd at least need to be like a pass game coordinator or run game coordinator if you're going to go from offensive line coach to that. Yeah, he went directly from Vikings offensive line coach to interim head coach to head coach. So I guess that one doesn't count because there's an interim in there. But yeah, it's unusual, but it's not unheard of for a quarterback's coach to interview for a head coaching job. Like we said, like we've seen quarterback coaches become head coaches.
Yeah.
But it's not common.
Weren't the Texans trying to hire McCowan at one point?
That was unusual. That was just because he was a high
one.
School coach. Yeah. But then he got hired as a quarterback's coach for Carolina. And then when that all blew up, he got hired as a quarterback's coach for the Vikings. So now at least he's coached in the NFL before he sees these interviews.
Yeah. Also from Damian, given the difference in regular versus postseason performance, are this year's NFC North division the biggest frauds of all time?
Yeah, well, right after the SEC, but yeah.
Ouch. Also, yes. I suppose you're finally back from Canada, so we can't really ask this. But with tariffs being imposed on Canadian imports, is it too expensive? If it's too expensive to bring Arif back, who should be the new co-host? I feel like
I'm not
Dusty
a product. I'm not like a good that's sold.
I mean,
but also, yeah, the answer is Dusty.
Yeah, Dusty's the obvious answer.
Oh, you guys are just saying that because I'm literally right here.
I would never pander to Dusty Tran or Dusty O'Connell.
I don't know if I've ever treated a guest well on the show, so I don't know if there's precedent for this.
I did share with Luke, by the way, the plan if something were to happen to me, what I would like to happen to Norse Code. So he's aware at least of what would end up
does
happening.
The plan involve him, or is he just like an executor of the will?
Well, kind of. The plan was going to be that if something were to happen to me, that you and Luke have an episode where you say we're gonna continue on, we're gonna do this. You know, James requested that we get along and we continue this on. We're gonna continue the podcast, and then the next episode, you guys have some big blow up and don't even finish the episode.
Okay, that's good. Actually, that's good. I like that.
That was how that was supposed to end. So he's on board with this. So just have fun with that if something happens. Tracy asks about Luke. Should we be alarmed that Luke Braun knew Jaden Daniels would be good?
Should we be alarmed that Luke figured out that the 3rd overall pick in the draft would be good at football? No. Luke doesn't know anything. He just made a guess. It worked. It's fine. Don't worry about it.
Also, Tracy asked, has Arif learned his lesson about asking questions on Twitter after his Southern accent fiasco?
God, okay. We explained this on the show, right?
We have not recorded in a while. We have not talked about this.
Oh my God, this is so stupid. Okay, so
in other news, we're about to go off the rails. So this is your warning.
About to,
yeah,
yeah. So after the Ravens game, right? It was the divisional round. Right?
Yes.
After the Ravens game, Josh Allen is doing an interview, and he's got like, I'm supposed to be careful about this, but I said he had a Southern accent, right? He has like a drawl of some sort. I'm like, why does he have a Southern accent? That doesn't make any sense to me. He grew up in California, went to school in Wyoming, and now lives in Buffalo. Where did he get that? And a bunch of people were like, Wyoming. And I was like, okay, why do people from Wyoming have a Southern accent? That doesn't make any sense to me. And then a bunch of people are like, haven't you ever been to the country, Arif? That's just what people from the country sound like. It's like, I grew up in Grand Forks, North Dakota. What are you talking about?
So the answer is no. I've never been to the country.
Oh my God. Our field trips were to Simplot and a dairy farm. Like, come on.
That's not true. I had a field trip up to Canada once. Twice, actually.
Okay. But you see what I mean? Like, we had people going to our school from Thompson, North Dakota, right? Like, come on.
But the whole point is that you didn't really get the whole Southern twang just being a thing around the country.
Yeah, that's not what I grew up with. When we went to Minot for that, people didn't have that accent.
No,
and that's rural, right? Carson Wentz doesn't have that accent, so you don't magically get an accent because you're on a farm, right?
Some people do. I think you're discounting the existence of cowboy cosplay.
Well, no, okay, so this is actually what I was going to get into because. So I got a bunch of great answers on Blue Sky, and a bunch of people were just mad at me on Twitter for like I can't believe you don't know this kind of thing. And people on Blue Sky were like, "Oh, it's interesting, you don't know that." Well, let me kind of explain it, which was the stereotype of how these two platforms operate right now, which is very funny. But that is one thing that a lot of people brought up, which I think is a really good point, Dusty. And Adam Harstead on Twitter linked me, so that was a helpful response, linked me to a piece, I think it's a Substack piece, but it's free, linked me to a piece about exactly what you're talking about, which is much more prevalent now than it was when I was growing up, and especially when you and James were growing up, which is that there is a uniformity, a universalization of what people would consider to be kind of rural culture, that there is kind of a rural universal understanding of common cultural components, which are played out through the media in forms like country music, which people loved country music in Grand Forks, right? They we had Wee Fest, right? That's happened. Yes. But the country music started really fetishizing that twang, which is heavily influenced by the Southern twang, but it's not completely that. And so pop country in particular has really leaned into it. And then you see it in movies all the time. You see it in comedy. And this is really funny. Larry the Cable Guy is a really good example of this. That's not his accent. And that's not a secret either. Like, he'll do interviews like his normal self. He's from a farm in Nebraska, and his accent is a Midwestern accent. It's not that dissimilar from mine, and it does not sound like what Josh Allen sounded like after the divisional game against the Ravens. It's just a fairly flat, what a lot of people might call a TV accent, because, you know, in order to be presentable for television, you're supposed to have kind of this universal accent. It sounds very similar, aside from some vowel sounds, to a lot of Midwestern regional accents. And that's what his sounds like. That's just his everyday, normal, that's what he grew up with accent. Then he puts on a character called Larry the Cable Guy, and that's the accent that a lot of people have picked up and started moving with. So that's one element that plays a role here. Another element that plays a role here that I didn't know, which is a really kind of interesting, somewhat regionally unique historical artifact, is the Okie migration during the Dust Bowl, and obviously then the Great Depression, where a lot of people from Oklahoma moved westward into California, into areas like Central California, like Firebaugh, which is where Josh Allen is from, like Bakersfield, which a bunch of people were arguing is not actually Central California. I don't know. I don't really care about your debate about what's NorCal, what's Central California, whether or not Bakersfield is any of that. Leave me out of it. Because there's a ton of debate about what counts as NorCal, what counts as Central California, what counts, whether Bakersfield. There's a ton of debate. I'm not interested. But a lot of country music came from Bakersfield and had that twang, because a lot of people's parents that, you know, a lot of the people that kind of helped produce this country sound, their parents or they themselves migrated from Oklahoma. And so that's where a lot of that accent comes from. So you've got a mix of the Okie accent and there were people from Firebaugh and people from Central California in my replies. And I didn't mention this on Twitter because I knew that it would just start another round of whatever. But like, I've been to Central California, not a ton, only once, but I spent like a week there, and I didn't hear anybody with this accent, and I didn't want to because I'd already said like 8 things and everyone got mad at every single thing I said. So I just stopped, which is a new thing for me. But, and, you know, it might have been just where I was at. Like, you know, we drove up and down the coast a little bit because it was, you know, Chelsea was going to a wedding, and we just kind of wanted to visit the coast areas, maybe see some sharks. I don't know. But like the San Luis Obispo area and stuff like that, maybe that's not where it is, in which case it's really hyper localized if that doesn't count as the part of Central California that has it. But like, we went to a farmer's market with the farmers. Actually, there's a lot of farmers markets where it's not the farmers that are selling you things. It's just people that are doing like their cottage industry thing. But these were the farmers that were selling, and it didn't sound like that at all. And okay, whatever. But it seems like the people who were from like Firebaugh in my replies were like, okay, about 20% of the people here sound like that. And I guess he's one of them. And some of them were making fun of them, and some of them were like, I think it's an affect, and some of them were like, I think it's just because of cowboy culture or cowboy cosplay, like you said, Dusty. But like, there was an opportunity for a lot of people to share some interesting facts, and they chose instead to act like I am from the East Coast of all places. Like, East Coast people think that you know, everything west of the Mississippi. I don't even know what they were trying to say. But it's like, I'm from where the Mississippi starts. Like, stop that. But like, I've been at like, there were people who are like, hey, I guess you've never traveled. You don't realize that your accent changes when you're like an hour away. And it's like, okay, I have moved an hour away. I have moved 3 hours away. I have moved 5 hours away. I've moved 13 hours away. I have moved 16 hours away. Like, I have moved a lot and I have traveled a lot. I understand that accents are different, but it was unusual to me that this guy had this accent based off of my travels. So that's what happened there.
I am going to suggest to you that you may be thinking about this too hard.
I didn't have a choice, okay? It was a bunch of people were angry at me, and I can't log off because I'm addicted to my phone. Also, it's kind of my job to be on Twitter. So this is not my fault, and I had to think about this. And then I did think about this, and there were some interesting things that some people said.
Think about this.
No.
Where are his coworkers from? Where's all the coaches and the people that he like plays with? Where are those guys all from? Maybe it's just like...
I've talked to a lot of football players whose coworkers are from the South, and they themselves do not have a Southern accent, Dusty.
Maybe it's just lazy code switching, you know?
It might be. I'm just confused because this is something that you covered in a CD release that you put out back in like 2002, 2003. David Cross put out a
oh my God,
where he discussed this that
was in my replies too.
Yeah, it was from me. It was from
well, not just from you, it was from a couple people.
This is absolutely a thing that exists, that has existed. This is a thing all over the country, and there's and
it's more prevalent now than it's ever been. Yep. So whatever.
It's blame Yellowstone, which I'm declaring as catnip for old people.
Sure.
But let's go to Arif Sama. Social media is war. For Arif's team of Theseus Corner, how many coaches and pending free agents must leave and be replaced before a team is no longer the same team asking for a divisional champion? No notes.
God, that's really good. I'm going to use the lazy answer that everyone uses when they get first asked the Ship of Theseus question, which is 50%.
I feel like it does. Yeah, well. Forlorn Vikings pessimist. Which team do you want to win? You must choose either the Chiefs or the Eagles. No cop-out answers.
As a part owner of the Chiefs, I think my answer is obvious. It's the Chiefs.
It kind of has to be at that point.
Yeah,
long time owner of the Chiefs.
Yeah, right.
Know that.
But also, okay, I do want to say this. A lot of people are just annoyed about the Chiefs because they're the Chiefs and they're winning, and it doesn't go that much deeper. Some people are really annoyed about like the Taylor Swift stuff, which cannot remotely bother me, so it doesn't factor in anything. But like, I don't like the Eagles. Done. Period. Easy. The reason for not liking the Chiefs seems kind of arbitrary. The reason for not liking the Eagles is because the players are annoying, because their fans are annoying, because they embrace being annoying and refuse to accept that. Like, there's a ton of reasons there. And then also, every win that Patrick Mahomes gets in the Super Bowl is one step closer to him dethroning Tom Brady. And I would much rather talk about Patrick Mahomes, greatest of all time, than Tom Brady, who I don't even think is the greatest of all time. He just lasted longer. Like, that's what that is. Obviously, he's a very good quarterback, right? But like, I think Peyton Manning was a better quarterback than him. That's just what I think. And now I don't have to worry about that because if Patrick Mahomes gets a three-peat and he's like, I don't know, one ring away from Brady or whatever, we can just dispense of this and just say it's Patrick Mahomes and that's fine. But also, like, the Chiefs are fun. Like, they're fun. Like, obviously this year they only scored 30-plus points once and it was in the postseason. So like, it's not quite the same. But like, Patrick Mahomes does crazy stuff all the time that makes you go, what the heck just happened? And like, Tom Brady kind of never really did that. And the Eagles like kind of win in boring ways unless it involves Saquon Barkley, and that's just this year. So I don't know. It's so obviously a Chiefs thing for me. I can't really hate them.
See, you actually wrote about why the Chiefs are so effing annoying. And why I have to be an Eagles fan, even though everything you said about the Eagles and their fans are true. The Chiefs this year, and Patrick Mahomes in particular, are good at being lucky, if such a thing can be said to exist. And that drives me insane.
But the Eagles also have like this crazy close game record too. Like, I don't know.
You know why I'm cheering for the Eagles is because I want Giants fans to be on suicide watch. I want Giants fans to just sit and watch this ridiculousness play out to its logical conclusion.
Yeah, I want this for Saquon. I don't care if anyone on the Chiefs gets a ring, but Barkley needs his.
I feel like the Barkley thing is it's so funny. If he wins the Super Bowl in his first year in Philadelphia, it is a message. So funny.
No, I agree that funniness certainly is for me, that's emotional hedging. Like, I'll just attach myself to that because that is genuinely hilarious.
Right? Like, Giants fans just watching and just looking down at their feet right around the end of the third quarter. Like, he just broke off another 40-yard run. Like, I want that.
So what you should have said to me to convince me was that it would get Carson Wentz another ring. But now it's too late. We have to move on to the next question.
We do actually have to move on to the next question. For Arif's 8th grade crush, from Arif's 8th grade crush, question for Arif's television corner: which reality TV show would produce the best candidates to be Secretary of Transportation?
I hate this.
You already know the answer. What's the name of the child? The
Kid Nation?
Kid Nation, yeah. Kid Nation produces fine young adults.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure like Olivia would be fine. I'm sure Anjay would be great at it. In fact, I'm just going to pick Anjay from Kid Nation. What's he up to these days?
We still need to do the actual watch along of that because I haven't seen it and you know too much about it, and I feel like it would ruin everyone's life. It'd be great.
The correct answer to this question is America's Got Talent. If you can coach one of those like gymnastics teams of like 30 little Taekwondo kids, I trust you with handling the nation's skies and railways.
For a second, I thought it was contestant and not host, and I was going to say, well, if we're doing America's Got Talent, I remember an episode of America's Got Talent where they had what's what I'm looking for? Steel Panther on, and I would trust Steel Panther to keep the airways safe.
Okay.
Let's go to Football's Misandrous Niche, who asks, for Arif's Arif Corner, what plan of action would Arif take towards the issue of lionfish destroying the wildlife of the Florida coast? Do you think there's a practical solution?
Of lionfish destroying the wildlife? So you got like an invasive species thing going on? I don't know, dude. It feels like the coral reefs around the world are facing a much bigger problem with ocean acidification, which is a product of the things that also contribute to climate change, but are not necessarily themselves climate change, but might as well call it climate change because the solution's the same. The lionfish, I guess, that's crazy. I don't know the answer to that. It feels like a lot of times the answer to invasive species is incentivize people to go after those invasive species, which sometimes works and sometimes doesn't. Very often we've seen the answer be like, hey, we have an invasive species. Let's introduce a natural predator. Oh no, the natural predator that we introduced is an invasive species. I feel like of the million times it's tried, that's worked maybe once. So I don't want to do that. But the problem with like creating incentives for people to go after lionfish is like fishing kind of doesn't work like that, and you'll just get a bunch of stuff in the meantime. So I'm not. Look, I've got a friend who is a wetlands ecologist, which is not the ocean, but it's close enough. So I'll just ask them and get back to you next episode. How does that sound?
Yeah, we're absolutely not going to go back to that.
This sounds great. I'm going to text them right now.
Adam Bryant asks, what do you think about hosting the next live show in Alaska at Hawktua Homestead? Now, there's a link that he had provided, and apparently there is one of the grantee of this particular piece of land out in Fairbanks is referred to as the Hawktua Homestead. I mean, look, nobody's using that name for a podcast at the moment.
Do you think? Also, I just looked. Anjay works at DocuSign. That's crazy. Yeah, I'll trust him to run our nation's railways and airways. Okay. Its name is Hawktua Homestead?
Yes.
Oh my gosh. Okay, there's not a lot going on this lot. Okay. So, with the question
if nothing else,
record a live show there?
So is there or isn't there?
I mean, look, worst case scenario, nobody's going to be making fun of Dusty when he walks into the room with an anime pillow. Like the odds of someone in Alaska making fun of Dusty at that point are pretty low. A little higher in the Denver area for some reason.
Yeah, I don't know what that's about.
I feel like the odds are also a lot higher that I come out of this actually dead.
Yeah, probably. They've got a great restaurant in Anchorage called Humpy's, and they have there's like a bunch of like great like seafood and Alaskan wilderness food that you can get there. But you can also get a big T-shirt that says "I got crabs at Humpy's," and I feel like that's something that we all need. Quite frankly, I feel like that's the next live show location. Dusty, do you still keep bees? I forget. Are you still a beekeeper?
You know, I'd like to be, but the bees just have other ideas.
No more bees. Well, I was gonna be happy that you were on here so we could get another voice of reason as far as bees are concerned. Patrick O'Neill,
but 2 hives in a row, 2 years in a row, both just up and left when spring came.
That's unfortunate. Patrick O'Neill asks, for the Norse Code Beekeeping Corner, how will the tariff war affect imported Alberta honey, 33.3 million pounds in 2024, to Minnesota? How can the Vikings' historic use of amulets and other witchcraft help save North American honey production? Yeah, Arif.
Well, I thought we were asking Dusty this question. What in the world?
He wants to be a beekeeper, but is not having success, so he is deferring to you.
Oh, okay. Well, I've got a list of products from the United States subject to 25%. No, that's from the United States. Okay. First of all, I want to acknowledge all of the people who, from the live show, when I was like, hey, why can't I feed this honey to children? Everybody tweeted at me, you can't do that with any honey. It's not unique to the honey that I was given. So thank you for that. Also, it very much seems like honey is subject to those tariffs. So how do we deal with this? Probably by using local Minnesotan honey. I don't actually see how much Canadian honey do we really use. I guess we're going to get answers to a lot of very similar questions very soon.
Apparently an awful lot.
Yeah, but like in Minnesota.
Like, are you talking about you personally? Well, I mean, we got the quote in the actual question.
Wait,
is that 30 million pounds? Is that to Minnesota?
Is that to Minnesota though?
That to America? Because that's a lot of
imported.
Also, is that a lot of honey? It feels like a lot of honey.
It feels like that's a sizable portion of our honey. Okay, how much honey does this feels like something I should have already known? How much honey does the United States consume? Because that'll give us a good understanding of whether or not 33 million. Okay, so United States honey production was 125 million pounds in 2022. The United States consumes, okay, that's per person. I don't want to do math. 1.3 pounds per person per year. So I'll just do it times 340, right? 442 million pounds, and we only produce 125 million pounds locally. But only 33 of that comes from, but we'll find honey from somewhere that is not being taxed. I don't know, man. It feels complicated. Maybe we shouldn't do it.
Do you have any suggestions to give to Dusty about ways to keep the bees from running away?
From running away?
Well, flying away, but yes, they keep leaving
I understand.
Spring.
I wasn't. It wasn't like a. I was just
apologies.
Saying,
yes.
I don't know. I usually heavily research our beekeeping related questions beforehand, because despite having a deep reserve of beekeeping knowledge, because that is my expertise, I want to make sure that
slightly back-footed because you're suddenly on the spot.
Well, I just don't want listeners to feel led astray, despite that expertise. So,
yeah, we didn't do that to Dusty at all earlier this episode.
Well, if this is somebody's first episode, I apologize for them not coming back, but I can see where they would make that choice.
But yeah, so I would say, try to figure out why they're leaving. If it's because of like pests that are, kind of infesting the hive, maybe, wrap the hive in wire mesh or something like that to prevent pests from entering. It could be that there's not enough food storage. Maybe there's something wrong with the hive itself. It could be a temperature-related thing, a humidity-related thing. So, kind of monitor those in and around the hive. The hive can get too hot, even if it's cold outside, just because of the level of activity inside the hive. So, maybe there's just not enough airflow. It really is kind of dependent on the particular circumstances. You got to figure out why they're leaving, but also you want to make sure that you've got a good... It feels like I'm reading off of something. I am just making this up because right now none of my beekeeping websites are loading. But it feels like if you kind of monitor what's going on in the hives before they begin fleeing, you might kind of stumble into your solution.
Well, you're faking it pretty well. And what I can tell you is I think we have like the third or fourth best bee habitat in the neighborhood. And in spring when they swarm,
by what metric? How do you know that?
Well, because I see other bees, and there's other like yards in the neighborhood that have like way more flowers than we do, and there's places that are closer to parks where there's actually like lots of flowers. Like I think our yard just doesn't, like, we planted a bunch of stuff in our yard, but I don't think there's enough food for like a colony of like 10,000 plus bees around here. And so in spring, when they've depleted all their honey, they just like, the queen is like, well, this is lame, and bounces. And then everybody else is like, lame. Well, guess we're going with her. And then we get empty beehives because they all overwintered last year or 2 years ago. And then last year we came out one morning and they were just like, peace.
Wow. Yeah. Peace. So, I mean, it sounds like bees. It sounds like plant more bee friendly flowers around.
Yeah. Let's go with that. Let's go to Deez, who asks, for Arif and Dusty's sumo corner. Dusty, in case you didn't know, we have a sumo corner now. Going into the 3-man playoff in January's Basho, are you a fan of the format in which they decide the winner? Also, did you shed a larger tear when Hoshoru, was named Yokozuna? When you can't put your...
This is great.
You can't leave your thing there because I can't tell what the letter's supposed to be. So move your mouse or move the cursor. I believe it's supposed to be Ten-Yu Ofuji. There we go.
Turn to Fuji?
Yes, let's go with that. Retired mid-Basho.
No, it's definitely the retirement.
How do we celebrate now that racism has officially ended?
Okay.
Okay.
It's out of the back of the end zones. It's not there anymore.
I say we put a holiday on one of the days where we don't have holidays anymore.
That's what we do? We celebrate? Because we can do that for whatever day this is, the 4th of February. Yeah, let's do
it. Okay.
As far as the Basho is concerned, however.
Yeah, okay. So I actually was aware of Turnifuji retiring midway through. That did make me sad. So I didn't... So I just get notifications now from like the sumo subreddit when a post gets popular enough, and now it's like on my phone just because I've had to do so much research for this stupid segment. But it's not unprecedented to have a 3-way playoff. We saw that happen in the November Basho in 2022. These things happen occasionally, and a lot of it's just because of stuff like retirements and similar records, because you have to have someone kind of just like win outright. So that's just kind of like what ends up happening. So I don't actually mind that there's a playoff format here. And it also gave us like a lot of, ammunition to essentially name Hoshoryu Yokozuna, which I don't know. I feel like I named him on a previous episode as a potential Yokozuna candidate, so it's not like this took me by surprise or anything like that. Obviously, I wanted Onosato to do better, but I mean, he's just not been having a good stretch of tournaments. So not a huge problem here. Now people are going to compare Hoshoryu to his uncle, which is going to be tough because he's like one of the 5 best Yokozuna ever. And it's kind of difficult to live up to that, but every journey starts with a step. So hopefully he can
isn't he training in his uncle's stable?
He is. That doesn't mean he's going to be as good as his uncle. Well,
no,
it's just
it invites the comparison at least.
so, of course, yeah, for sure. Especially, I mean, the name he took as well. But like, I'm not upset about that, and I'm glad we don't have like this huge gap between Yokozuna either. So we've got kind of like somewhere to aspire towards as all these Ozeki kind of try to create a second Yokozuna and have like a real Yokozuna rivalry like we've had in some of the better eras of the past.
Yeah, I'm glad Teruno Fuji didn't go full Joe Biden on us.
Yeah. Yeah,
I think he probably could have retired before the tournament, but I appreciate why he didn't want to.
Yeah. I mean, it's always a tough decision, and, finding out midway through a tournament that that's really the best decision for you, I think it takes a little bit of courage to do that. So props to him. Yeah.
So let's go to Room Don Sharif, who asks, what do Arif and James do on Thursday nights now that they don't have to answer our weird questions?
I mostly go to bed.
Arif sleeps on Thursdays. I announce basketball games. That's what I've been doing on Thursday nights lately. Also, a lot of zoos. I'm going to fix the spelling on this because this is just going to annoy me. It's annoying me. It's not annoying the podcast listener. It's just thing. A lot of zoos are making fundraisers where they put the name of an X on a thing for an animal to eat for Valentine's Day. What X Vikings should we feed to what animal at the zoo?
What are these zoos?
Wait,
so apparently they're very fun.
So like you put the name of your X, so you pay to put the name of your X on like a piece of food that an animal will eat?
Yes.
You just have like an edible Sharpie and like a piece of beef. You just write a name on it and throw it to a leopard or something.
Yeah.
Or a seal.
That's weird.
Yes.
I would.
It annoys Arif because this is something Arif would have come up with if he knew this were an option.
I would just recommend entering and exiting more stable relationships so that this doesn't even come up as an option for you. But I realize not everybody has
coming from you is impressive. Coming from me, it's bad.
I have a lot of X's and I only resent one of them. So I think I've got a great track record, even though I've got like
an anomaly at this point.
A crazy situation going on.
I'm staring into the void. The void is staring back.
How many X's are you putting on foods, James?
Boy. I got that season pass, boy.
He's got the birdseed special. They got a guy that writes on the rice grains, writing a name on every piece of birdseed before they throw it out.
I come in with the blue Sharpie because I know the blue Sharpie looks better than the black one, as far as how it looks on the skin of the animal. So like, I've already got.
So you're writing your name on live animals and then throwing them into other animal cages? That's crazy.
That's how that works. You're feeding the animals to it's feeding time. That's how that works.
Yeah, it's usually not like. It's usually like an already butchered piece of beef and not like
I want to. No, you see, I have the season pass. I have the season.
And you're like, we got to lower that goat into the T-Rex cage.
No, that's exactly what I was about to say. I was about to say, we're driving up to the T-Rex pen and we're looking at the goat. And I just happen to have a very large name scrawled across the back of it. It's fine. There's nothing like.
So is it nothing about this name or?
Well, now it's the goat's name.
It's the goat's name. Yeah. I'm not dead naming a goat.
All right. So what ex-Viking should we feed to what animal? I mean, I don't want to feed it to a lion or a bear, right? That just feels like a little too, we don't want to give them more ammo. So like a leopard, right, would be kind of cool. Preferably like a non-NFL animal, right? Which I guess leopards are technically panthers, so maybe not. But yeah, there's a lot of, I guess a tiger's a Bengal. Whatever. There's a bunch of carnivores in these zoos. It could even just be a gorilla. They're omnivores. Who cares? What ex-Viking?
I'd be down with feeding Brett Favre to basically anything.
Yeah, Brett Favre. That one feels way too easy. But like, yeah, Brett Favre, Blair Walsh. I think that one's pretty easy. Let's see, Darren Sharper, but like actually just him. And not
Darren
his
Sharper
name.
to a bunch of hogs.
Yeah,
I feel like that's
30 to 50 feral hogs. Yeah,
Yeah,
He can be fed to the other food.
He'd be fed to the other food. Yeah. Recent ex-Vikings. I don't know that any have like super upset me.
I'm trying to think of a recent vibes killer.
I mean, like,
even the
I
guys
don't
who
like
weren't good at the position were like
That
good in the
feels
locker
like-
room.
Yeah. Feels like too much if it like with Chris Cook. Like sure he sucks, but like whatever, who cares?
Right, and then he's like, "Buddy, feed me to animals. Come on!" Feels a little over the top.
Brett Favre and then Darren Sharper. That's really easy.
yeah. Darren Sharper first, but
Yeah, well, actually Darren Sharper, but then also Brett Favre's name.
yeah. Room Dawn Sharif also asks, I'm sick of hearing the big game as a non-copyrighted way to refer to the Super Bowl. What alternate innuendos can we come up with?
Probably Ultra Match.
The large play.
The large play.
The Big Enchillada seems like something we could do.
That's
here.
a decent one. I'm sure some places have already used that, but that's a good one. What do Premier League teams? Sometimes they call them ties, and sometimes they call them fixtures. Gargantuan fixture, I think, is a good one. Ties is very weird. I don't know why they call them that.
I could get behind the fixture. I think
Cool.
that could work.
Sure it is.
Don from Ohio asks, is Kevin O'Connell this century's Dennis Green? Average teams that overachieve in the regular season but can't win in the playoffs.
Come on. I mean, I know that this is like Don's thing, but like, come on, man. This is 3rd year as a coach. That's nuts. Also, like, the Vikings did Denny Green dirty. Come on. Let's not. Come on.
Well, finally, from Don from Ohio, for James and Arif, and we'll throw in Dusty, for our esoteric Christianity corner, was I wrong to use, I assume that's supposed to be theology, but theurgy, to siphon Vikings optimism to the Ohio State University so we could win a national championship? The reality is the Buckeyes had a better chance of going all the way than the Vikings ever did, despite losing to Michigan.
For unrelated reasons, I had to look up thaumaturgy the other day. It has nothing to do with actual witchcraft. I just had to look it up.
No one said it did until you did.
Sure. But thaumaturgy is the branch of magic that deals with impacting or otherwise like changing the physical world. So obviously there's like 8 million different like sub branches of magic that come from thaumaturgy. But theurgy is the practice of magic where you, I mean, it often involves rituals, but it's generally a practice of magic that interacts with a spirit or a god or some other supernatural power itself. So that could be just communing. That could be, conjuring. That could be compelling, right? But it's an interaction with some kind of supernatural or divine being. So I don't think that this was necessarily meant to be theology. I think Don from Ohio is now practicing theurgy. Were you wrong to use theurgy to siphon the Vikings' optimism to Ohio State? I would say you were wrong in a bunch of ways. One, you were wrong to use theurgy, period. Two, you were wrong to use theurgy to help Ohio State, no matter who it hurt. Three, you were wrong to do it while hurting the Vikings, because then I got a bunch of messages saying, hey, Arif, what the heck? You told me to believe in this team. And then I had to clarify, yeah, but the point was that you know that they're going to fail and you still believe in them. Like, that's the deal. But then I had to explain that, and that's just a lot of work, and I don't like doing work. So That's at least 3 ways that you were wrong in that one act. But I'm sure there are others. Saying that the Buckeyes had a better chance of going all the way is probably actually a reason that you shouldn't have done it. No one likes Ohio State, so I didn't. Mind you, I'd rather them than Notre Dame, but like, honestly, man, what are we doing?
And with that, that's going to end this episode of Norse Code. It looks like somebody has a score prediction down here, so I'm going to let presumably Dusty to give his score prediction here.
42-21 Eagles.
Is it my turn? 32-28 Chiefs.
And I think
they're going to score more than 30 in a win? Wow.
Yeah, they just did it. They just did it.
They did just do it. I just think everyone's going to have a fun time. Also 30-28 Eagles.
Okay.
So we'll see who's wrong, and it'll likely end up being me. Arif, what do you have to plug?
I wrote I think it's like 7,500 words about. Some people have called it their favorite beef in football. It's Jim Nagy versus Eric Elko, who are the respective directors of the Senior Bowl and the Shrine Bowl, or the East-West Shrine Game, I guess is the actual term for it. But I wrote about what goes on at these all-star games, and particularly these all-star practices, and why the bidding war between the two has kind of evolved into kind of an actual real competition between the two. The things that, these directors, the behaviors that they engage in, the ways they try to undermine each other, like just it's a lot of gossip and tea spilling in that piece at the top of it. But then I kind of go into like why people even go to these games, like, or these practices. Like, what's the point of a media member or a scout going to like 3 days of practice for a player in an unfamiliar environment? What does that even do? So I've got that piece up. It took a lot of time and a lot of investment to write, so please check it out. A lot of people said that they really liked it because of how it felt like it was 3 or 4 pieces kind of woven together. It was kind of a weird one to write because it was all of those things. It was also, my original intention was just to write the second half of that piece as its own thing and not all of this other stuff, but it just kind of materialized in my lap, so I put it all together. But you can check that out. I've got a piece coming up about like the economics of the Super Bowl. Hopefully that'll publish midway through tomorrow. I don't have it done yet, so it could be even Thursday, but that's the idea. So that's over at wideleft.football. I've got pieces coming up from some other writers. I also, at some point, will have a piece from Luke Braun. I don't think it's going to be this week or next week, but at some point I'll have a piece from Luke Braun. I've got a piece from 1 or 2 other writers kind of queued up if they want to get around to it. But yeah, we've got a couple of different perspectives heading over to Wide Left. So check that over at wideleft.football.
I mean, Arif, I don't often get to say this, but Dusty, do you have anything you want to plug?
No, not really. Just come back again next year when I return for this increasingly irrelevant episode.
Yeah, it's very convenient to get you on for these shows. I don't really have to go far to get you in the virtual room or anything. So
yeah. But every episode of this show, other than this one, is absolutely worth the price of admission if you subscribe. So, the only thing I want to plug is patreon.com/norsecode.
See, I just have this feeling you just miss saying that phrase.
I do. Sometimes Patreon? I wake up screaming it.
Actually, it's funny you mentioned that. A few years ago, I was told by my ex-wife that I was doing the intro in my sleep.
Oh my God.
I was trying to throw to Arif and was upset that I wasn't getting a response. I was very
It's crazy that you
out.
could do the intro in your sleep, but not when you're not staring at a microphone. That's
I have to be locked in, otherwise it doesn't work. I don't get it. It's a look. It's the Zane Gonzalez thing. All right, like I can't. I have to touch my head in a certain way, otherwise it doesn't work. Like it's.
I don't love that, but okay. Well, I'll let that go.
I We'll talk after the show. some things have come to light, but for Arif and for Dusty, thank you so much for listening to this episode of Norse Code. Hope you guys have enjoyed it. We will be back soon. So for all of them, please thank you for listening. And what was the phrase from Dusty earlier? It was the horrors persist, but so do we. And we'll see you soon. Norse Code is the largest and only division of Norse Code LLC. You can find Norse Code on the Daily Norseman, SB Nation's Vikings blog at dailynorseman.com. You can also find it on iTunes, Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, Spotify, Google Play, and wherever fine podcasts are aggregated. Our Vikings blogger extraordinaire and generally useful human is Arif Hassan of... and he can be found on Twitter at Arif Hassan NFL. I am your producer and host, and my name is James Pagashnik. You can find me at the show's official Twitter feed at NorseCodeDN or at my personal account at Big Mono. If you'd like to donate a few bucks to the show, you can do so in a couple of different ways. You can go to patreon.com/NorseCode and donate there. For $3.50 a month, you get bonus material and more. You can also go to paypal.me/NorseCode for a one-time donation, or you can go to norsecode.threadless.com and pick up some Norse Code merch. Any questions or comments that cannot fit in a tweet can be sent to norsecodepodcast@gmail.com. On behalf of the Norse Code staff, we thank you so much for listening.
Our formula is this.
All things are possible through the power of Ben DiNucci.